Welcome back to the show, everyone. It's DinaKalmeta here, and for today's news, I wanted to bring you some updates concerning what's happening with the United States, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, as well as Greenland, Cuba, and Mexico. We have a lot to cover, so let's dive in.
President Trump was meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Monday to discuss options for intervention in Iran. With that in mind, a national security expert said that President Trump may already be prepared to act against Iran, suggesting a widely reported upcoming briefing, as I just mentioned, on U.S. options, which could be intentional deception. A senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Rebecca Henrich, said that President Trump definitely already has options in mind, and he has been regularly briefed by the military about the situation. Now, of course, there are other options available to President Trump besides military, such as cyber attacks, deploying Starlink satellite internet to allow citizens to communicate. But asked if Iran had crossed President Trump's red line to trigger a response, the president himself said they're starting to. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination. Now, he said this on Sunday. Now, over in Israel, the IDF said Monday that it had remained on high alert for possible surprise scenarios because Iran has threatened that they will strike Israel and U.S. military bases. Now, with that said, the U.S. State Department issued an urgent security alert on Monday warning American citizens in Iran to leave the country immediately. According to the alert, demonstrations across Iran are escalating and may turn violent. They already have, with arrests and injuries already reported. It noted that authorities have imposed widespread security measures, including road closures, disruptions to public transportation, and severe restrictions on mobile, landline, and national internet networks. Airlines have also limited or canceled flights to and from Iran, with several suspending service until Friday, January 16th. The State Department cautioned U.S. citizens to expect continued internet outages and to prepare alternative means of communication. Those who can safely do so are urged to consider departing Iran by land through Armenia or Turkey. Now, other reports, such as Time magazine, is reporting that thousands have perished due to the Iranian regime and their crackdown on the protests. One group is estimating that approximately 6,000 protesters have perished, so it could very well be in the thousands. And you know what the Iranian regime is doing? They're actually broadcasting the footage live. And I'll leave a link for you guys. I can't obviously say certain words here on YouTube, but you get my point. Now, this comes from Michael Schneider of The Most Important News, but he says that if President Trump does attack Iran, it could spark an apocalyptic conflict in the Middle East. So what will President Trump choose? Now, on Monday, President Trump did take one step. He said, effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. This order is final and conclusive. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Needless to say, this will not cause the overflow of the Iranian regime. And since China does lots of business with Iran, this means that everything coming across the Pacific Ocean from China will now be slapped with an additional 25% tariff. So this is going to make China's goods even more expensive for U.S. consumers, and the Chinese are going to be even angrier with us than they were before. Now, in addition to the new tariffs, we are also being told that airstrikes are very much on the table, and that will be discussed when he meets with Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and Dan Kane today. Now, the Iranians are saying that they do not want war, and they are even offering to negotiate with the United States. Now, of course, what the Iranians are really saying is that they do not want the U.S. to interfere while they conduct a mass intervention of innocent protesters. And of course, that's not the word that Michael used, but you can see it on the screen there. That is why they suddenly want to negotiate. It's all about buying time, but time may be running out for the Iranians. Now, with that said, it certainly feels like something big is coming, Michael says. And the guys at the Pentagon are ordering a lot more pizza than normal right now. Look at those numbers. Domino's got 100% spike in orders. Extreme Pizza got 213%. Pizzato Pizza, 217%. Papa John's is 192%. So they're eating a lot of pizza. going over plans, I'm sure, in regards to Iran. So is what it comes down to. If President Trump gives a green light for U.S. airstrikes, the Iranians will start firing off missiles at Israeli cities. And once that happens, it will mean an all-out war. Everything that has been going on in the Middle East for the last 5 decades has been leading up to this. Now, a time of reckoning is at hand, and global events are about to go completely haywire.
What's happening in the Middle East right now is literally a ticking time bomb. It's also wars and rumors of wars, nation rising up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, as well as distress of nations. And as always, I'll continue to keep you updated. But I would like to switch gears and talk about what else President Trump has been up to. It's being reported that apparently he's told his generals to put together a plan to invade Greenland. He's also saying that he may go into Mexico on land and take care of the cartels over there. And also he told Cuba, let's make a deal before it's too late.
President Trump posted on Truth Social, Cuba lived for many years on large amounts of oil and money from Venezuela. In return, Cuba provided security services for the last 2 Venezuelan dictators, but not anymore. Most of those Cubans are, and I can't say that word here on YouTube, from last week's USA attack. And Venezuela doesn't need protection anymore from the thugs and extortionists who held them hostage for so many years. Venezuela now has the United States of America, the most powerful military in the world by far. To protect them and protect them, we will, the president said. There will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. All in caps, as you can see. He's shouting there. I strongly suggest they make a deal before it is too late. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. Whenever this particular president sent out a warning, 9 times out of 10, he means it. So we ask the question again, will the United States go into Cuba? Well, Michael Schneider wrote a piece about this and other nations as well coming under the United States control. And he goes on to say that the current government in Cuba is falling. That right now, the Cuban economy is collapsing because their access to Venezuelan oil has been cut off. So it's a pretty difficult time for the population of the island. When one Truth Social user suggested that Secretary of State Marco Rubio could be the next president of Cuba, Trump jokingly said that it sounds good to me. Of course, he was joking there, but obviously I think he's serious about going into Cuba. That's just my personal opinion. If we were to follow his past patterns and behavior, he's given them a chance, like he gave Maduro a chance to turn himself in. So time will tell. Meanwhile, what's the latest on Mexico? President Trump has said that the U.S. should start hitting land, explicitly talking about targeting cartels running Mexico. That's effectively a call for cross-border military action inside a neighboring country. Moving along, let's talk about Greenland. President Trump has ordered his Special Forces commanders to draw up a plan for the invasion of Greenland, but it is being resisted by military figures. Sources say that the policy hawks around the U.S. president, led by political advisor Stephen Miller, have been so aggressive by the success of the operation to capture Venezuela's Maduro that they want to move quickly to seize the island before Russia or China makes a move. But such a dramatic move would put him at odds with Starmer and would effectively lead to the collapse of NATO. According to the sources, the president has asked the Joint Special Operations Command to prepare the invasion plan, but it is being resisted by the Joint Chiefs of Staff on the grounds that it would be illegal and would not be supported by Congress. One source said that they have tried to distract Trump by talking about less controversial measures, such as intercepting Russian ghost ships. One diplomatic cable describes the worst-case scenario as leading to the destruction of NATO from the inside. Since Congress would not allow Trump to exit NATO, occupying Greenland could force the Europeans to abandon NATO. If Trump wants to end NATO, this might be the most convenient way to do it. Now, this is according to a source. We don't know for a fact that President Trump is going to walk away from NATO. In fact, he said just the other day that NATO needs the United States more than we need NATO. Now, under a compromise scenario, Denmark would agree to give President Trump full military access to Greenland and deny access to Russia and China. Although America America already has free access to the island, it would be put on a legal basis. So, will President Trump go into Greenland? Time will tell, but he is getting a lot of pushback. In fact, the UK is saying that they could send troops to Greenland to try and dissuade him away from going in there. He's been condemned by Germany and by France and by others for the notion of going into Greenland. And with all of this on the table, Venezuelan, Mexico, Greenland, Cuba, now Canada fears it could be next. A blunt column in Canada's largest national newspaper went viral this week, warning of the possibility that President Trump may use military coercion against the country. The author's advice: learn from Finland's defenses against Russia, expand the civil defense force, build a national drone strategy inspired by Ukraine's example, and think about the unthinkable. The fear has even inspired its own dark comedy, a widely shared story on the Beaver Tin, a satirical website similar to The Onion, sported the headline, "Mark Carney turns off geolocation on phone just in case." Now, with that said, Axios is reporting that a House Republican has introduced a bill to let President Trump annex Greenland. Lawmakers in both parties have brushed off the notion of invading Greenland and sovereign countries like Mexico and Colombia, but President Trump has continued to hammer the idea. An invasion of Greenland, which is an overseas territory of Denmark, could trigger a NATO response under Article 5 of the organization's charter. So what does Article 5 mean? It means if one is attacked in NATO, all is attacked. And before we conclude the show, we cannot leave out Russia. Russia has been very busy lately, as has the United States. I'm sure you're all aware about the tanker issue being chased by the United States military. It was caught. It was seized by the United States. Russia was very upset by it. They said, we're going to sink U.S. ships. Of course, none of that happened. Thank goodness. But then again, Russia has been busy in Ukraine, unfortunately. Russia says it used a nuclear-capable missile to strike in western Ukraine. Not a practice launch, not a drill, but an operational strike. Now, we're not being told that a nuclear warhead was used, but the message is crystal clear. Russia is publicly demonstrating that its delivery systems work. They can reach targets in west of Ukraine, and they want NATO to watch. On top of that, we have a hypersonic warning shot that analysts are calling the Orange Ink Strike. Hypersonic weapons travel at mind-bending speeds and are hard to track and intercept. When a nation fires something like that in a conflict, it is more than just a battlefield tactic. It is a signal. Think about the combined message. We can strike deep into Ukraine with nuclear-capable missiles. We can use hypersonic systems that your defenses struggle to catch, and we are willing to talk about it loudly. This isn't just about Ukraine. This is a communication campaign aimed at Washington, Brussels, and every capital that has pledged to keep supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes. Meanwhile, Russia is drawing its own red lines in very public ways. Moscow has warned that any foreign troops in Ukraine will be treated as legitimate targets. That is a direct message to Western nations considering sending instructors, special forces, or any kind of official deployment, even in limited roles. Meanwhile, Express News is reporting that the UK Defense Secretary John Healey has said that he would kidnap President Putin and hold him accountable for war crimes in Ukraine. The comments came as he visited Kyiv on Friday after Moscow launched yet more attacks, as I just mentioned. Asked by the Kyiv Independent if he would kidnap any world leader, who would it be? And he said he would take Putin into custody and hold him account for war crimes. And of course, Russia responded. Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson lashed out at the British Defense Secretary after he said he would detain President Putin, calling the remarks the wet dreams of British perverts. So, very interesting comments there coming from the UK. Reports now say a key US Russia nuclear treaty is headed for the end of the road. This agreement has limited the number and type of strategic nuclear weapons both sides could deploy. It hasn't been perfect, but it has functioned as kind of a guardrail. When that guardrail disappears, you enter an arms race mentality. If they can build it, we must build it. If they can deploy it, we must match it or exceed it. And while that clock runs down, something unusual happens over the United States. America's nuclear sniffer jet made a mysterious trip across the states. This is a highly specialized aircraft designed to detect radiation in the atmosphere, basically to sniff out nuclear activity. So we have to ask the question, what triggered that deployment? We don't get those details. But again, the pattern is what matters. Nuclear capable and hypersonic systems on the battlefield, red lines hardening around foreign troops, the treaty framework is eroding. Specialized aircraft quietly checking the air for signs of something more. Jesus warned of wars and rumors of war. Not just open conflict, but the constant drumbeat, the hovering anxiety, the sense that something larger is taking shape.
Today's show wasn't just a list of headlines, it's a pattern. And patterns are warnings before they become events. And prophecy is right on schedule. Everything that Jesus said we would see, we are seeing right now. But I'd love to hear from you guys. I want to know what you think. What do you think about what's happening with Iran? What about Trump going into Greenland? What about the sniffer plane above LA? Tell me in the comments. Also, when you have some time, come and visit me on my social media pages, as well as my website at www.cww7news.com. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.